Well, tonight I want to talk about a bit how to install your piston rings and how to clock them, how to set their spacing, the piston and gaps spacing. And the first thing I would like to talk about a bit of the piston rings. I can roughly divide them into two. We have compression rings and then we have oil rings. And these oil rings, we have three of them, and they go all into the same groove, the third groove. They don't have any orientation, but you sandwich them like this. And one thing I can talk about is this is the expander ring, if I know it's right, and the expander ring is not just straight. Friends, as if you can see, there is this straight part and there is this tip all along the expander, and this is just a bit higher than the rest. So why am I telling this? If you sandwich expander and the scrapers on top of each other, they will not fit correctly into their groove. They will jam. And so what's the right thing? You avoid putting the scraper on top of that hill, on top of that parts that are higher than the rest. So this is the way you sandwich them. You see the higher parts are now behind. This is the thing I would like to talk about. And about compression rings. Compression rings have their order and their direction. I can better show it in new rings. So, according to the manufacturer, you usually have markings on your piston rings. Yes, and this manufacturer says D and DY. I have no idea. It's perhaps Chinese, I don't know. But this tells us that which ring goes where and which side is facing up. And there's a rule of thumb, the sides with the markings are facing up. And in this case, this is the second ring and this is the top ring, which means the top ring goes into first groove and the second ring goes into the second groove. So these markings are telling us where to put these rings. And how do we install them? So how do we install them? We can install these oil rings by hand, and we can just walk them around the piston like this. We can just place it and then we can just walk them around, and we can just take them out like this. We can just bend them, expand them with our hands. Both are the same, right, for this scrapers. But when it comes to this compression rings, it's not the same story. If you try to fit them with your hand, you will most certainly damage. If you are doing it also the first time, you will most certainly damage your piston. So if you try to walk it around the piston, what may happen? You first put one end inside its groove, and then you try walking it around. And then at some point, you may end up something like this. This sharp end will scrape here, you know, and then you may have scratches like this. I intentionally have these scratches. Maybe I can make one now also. Yeah, as you can see, I scratched it. And you may also carry this scratched material inside the groove. You will totally not want it. And you also don't want to bend the pressure compression rings like this. So what do? You get yourself a ring expander, or you can really easily make one. I made this myself. So you can either use a plier like this or like a retaining clip remover like this. I used this one. So what I did, I get myself a trash can. That's the can that's trashed. I cut a piece of it and I bend it like this into a V shape, and then I just tape it around this tool, and you see the V is like this, and I tape this, and then in the end I have this ring, piston ring expander, and I will show you how you can use it. So yeah, I guess this is the way you do it. And about clocking, the piston end gap clocking, the spacing. Well, there's so much information out there. I have no idea which one is the true one. I believe there is no true one, but you need to space, you need to clock your gaps, that's for sure. So this is the way I do it. I am not telling that it's the right thing to do. What I try to avoid the trussed surfaces. So if you look online, then you can read about that the pistons have trussed surfaces, and what I read is you try to avoid the end gaps, the gaps putting on this surfaces. So I try to avoid putting these end gaps on these surfaces, and what I try to also achieve, that I try to achieve 180 degree between the compression rings and also between the oil rings. So what this letterings mean, and it was a bit erased. Let's say this is, let's put it back. This is a fuck. Okay, let's write it again. This is a 2C, yeah. So what it says, this is the first compression ring, this is the second compression ring, this is the expander ring, this is the scraper, second scraper, first scraper. So this just tells me how I place them. The way I place them, I first start the expander, then I switch to the second scraper, which goes below the expander, then I put the scraper, the first scraper, and then I put the second compression spring, and then the first compression spring, and the installation ends. So yeah, at this point, if you are installing into a new piston, you may want to oil your piston with some conventional mineral engine oil, and then you can start. So how do we install them? The first ring we install will be the compression ring. Pardon me, the expander ring. So we will just walk it around. We take our piston, place the ends of the thing. Why I have these things, I try to install them with the gaps, placing the gaps. So I don't want to arrange the gaps after I install the rings. So I take my E for the expander, and I place the ends accordingly, and I put one end in, and then I start walking my expander to its screw. Yeah, and then what you need to check is if the ends are butting up. As you can see, they butt up. Yeah, so check it and put it under its gap. So the second ring I'll put is the second scraper. Second scraper goes down the expander. So we will also walk this with our hand. So what we'll do, we will place it neat. As you can see, the mark is up, and then we will place it and walk it slowly like this, and then of course we will try to avoid any damage still. Then let's put it down, and then what we need to check, if it's rotating freely. It should rotate freely, because I told you, remember the sandwich thing, that there are some upper parts, higher parts on the expander. If they don't seat properly, they will just clock here. So this is a correct seating. The next thing is the second scraper, which has its marking here. So we come here, we have our scraper, we place the end on top of the expander here. Come on, yeah. We place it on top and then we walk it in. Then, yep, we walk it in and we check if they are rotating freely. So, at this point, you can check that there is, in the sandwich configuration, the expander is below than the rest too. This is how it should be. So you can you can check that. So the next ring we will put is the second compression ring, and take into consideration that these have markings, and markings should face up. And then we will use our expander. So how we will use our expander? We will have our ring and we will place the ends inside these grooves. And let me do it. Yep. And then using this focus, and then we can now expand it. So my recommendation here is, I saw people that they try to install rings while the expander is facing in this direction. What I recommend is install them sideways, because now you can you need to sit this ring inside its groove, and from this angle, from side, you can just lean to your left and you can see the groove much better. So the second compression ring end is here, so I start expanding it. I am also holding it with my hand. I expand and I lower the ring on the piston, and I am leaning left and I'm checking its groove. I placed the piston ring in its groove and I am slowly releasing the tension on the piston ring, and now you can see very easily we installed our second piston ring. And the last piston ring is the top one, and we will check its marking, of course, and we will place it inside our expander. And then, as I said, sideways is easier. We will come on top of the piston, expand it while holding the ring. We will lower it down, and then we will insert it to its groove and we will let it sit. Yeah, that's it. You can also check again your spacing, your clocking, and this is how I do it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave me a comment or subscribe if you liked, and thanks for watching.